In a buzzing city known for its vibrant music scene and larger-than-life personalities, there lived a young rapper who was trying to make a name for himself. Let's call him the Kid. The Kid had big dreams and even bigger ambitions. He wanted nothing more than to be the next big thing in hip-hop. But no matter how hard he worked, he couldn't seem to break through the noise. Every time he thought about why, one name kept coming to mind: Snoop Dogg. For years, Snoop had been an icon in the rap game. His smooth flow, laid-back style, and undeniable charisma made him a legend. People loved him not just because of his music, but also because of the way he carried himself. He was cool, calm, and always seemed to have everything under control. But to the Kid, Snoop wasn't just a role model, he was a roadblock. A guy who had already taken up all the space at the top, leaving little room for anyone else. One night, the Kid found himself at a local club where everyone who was anyone in the music world hung out. The energy inside was electric. Lights flashed, music blared, and people danced like there was no tomorrow. In the VIP section, surrounded by friends and fans, sat none other than Snoop Dogg himself. The Kid saw this as his chance to finally stand out. Instead of walking up to introduce himself or showing any respect, he decided to take a riskier route. He started making fun of Snoop. Standing near the bar with a group of buddies, the Kid began cracking jokes loud enough for everyone around to hear. "Man, look at him over there," he said, pointing toward Snoop. "Still acting like it's the 90s. Does he even know what year it is? Maybe he thinks we're still wearing oversized jerseys and listening to cassettes." His friends laughed, nervously, unsure if they should join in or stay quiet. The crowd nearby turned their heads too, some amused, others uncomfortable. The Kid didn't stop there. He went on, mocking Snoop's slow, chill vibe. "Yo, does he ever get excited about anything? Like, imagine him running late for something, he'd probably stroll in 2 hours later like, 'What's good, y'all?'" More laughter erupted, though it felt forced now. It was clear that while some people thought the Kid was funny, others were offended by his blatant disrespect. Snoop, meanwhile, remained unfazed. Sitting comfortably in his booth, he heard every word. But instead of reacting angrily or getting into an argument, he simply raised an eyebrow, took a sip from his drink, and smiled. There was something knowing in that smile, almost as if he could see right through the Kid's bravado. He didn't say a word, didn't move a muscle beyond that tiny smirk. And yet everyone noticed it, including the Kid. At first, the Kid felt triumphant. He had managed to grab attention, hadn't he? Everyone was talking about him now, even if it was for mocking someone as legendary as Snoop. What he didn't realize, however, was that this moment would set off a chain reaction he couldn't have predicted. Little did he know, Snoop wasn't just another celebrity sitting in a club. He was part of something much bigger, a network of connections, friendships, and influences that spanned far beyond what the Kid could comprehend. As the night wore on, the Kid basked in his newfound spotlight. Clips of his comments started circulating online, drawing mixed reactions from fans. Some cheered him on, calling him brave for taking on such a big name. Others criticized him, accusing him of being disrespectful and immature. But deep down, the Kid knew he had crossed a line. He might have gotten laughs tonight, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he had awakened something, or someone, he wasn't ready to face. Unbeknownst to him, the real storm was only beginning. The morning after the club incident, the Kid woke up feeling like he was on top of the world. His phone buzzed nonstop with notifications. Clips of him mocking Snoop Dogg had gone viral overnight, and people were talking about him everywhere. Social media, blogs, even local radio shows. At first, the attention felt incredible. For years, he had been struggling to get noticed, grinding hard to make a name for himself in a crowded industry. But now, finally, he was relevant. People were watching, listening, and reacting. But not everyone was impressed. While some fans praised him for having the guts to take on a legend, others called him out for being disrespectful. Comments poured in from all sides. Some said he was brave for standing up to someone so iconic, while others accused him of being arrogant and immature. The backlash started to pile up, but the kid brushed it off. He told himself that controversy was part of the game. If people were talking about him good or bad, that meant he was winning, right? Feeling emboldened by the sudden surge of attention, the kid decided to double down. He went into the studio the very next day and recorded a freestyle track aimed directly at Snoop. The song was full of jabs about Snoop's age, his laid-back style, and even his fashion choices. In one line he rapped, "Still stuck in the past, man, your time is done, while I'm stepping up, shining bright like the sun." When he released the track online later that evening, it blew up almost instantly. Fans debated whether the diss was clever or just plain rude, but one thing was clear. It had gotten people talking. What the kid didn't realize, though, was that this wasn't just about music anymore. By targeting Snoop, he had stepped into territory far beyond what he understood. Snoop wasn't just another rapper. He was a cornerstone of hip-hop culture. His influence stretched across generations, genres, and even industries. And when you messed with someone like Snoop, you weren't just messing with one person, you were poking a hornet's nest. Word of the diss track quickly reached Dr. Dre, who happened to be working closely with Snoop during this period. Dre heard the song and immediately picked up the phone to call his longtime friend. "Yo, did you hear this kid coming for you?" Dre asked, half laughing as he played the track over the speaker. Snoop listened quietly, his expression unreadable. After a moment he chuckled softly and said, "Man, let the boy have his moment. Karma'll handle the rest." But karma wasn't the only thing keeping an eye on the situation. As the days passed, the fallout from the kid's antics began to spread further than he ever anticipated. Friends of Snoop started reaching out, asking if he needed them to step in and shut the kid down. Collaborators, producers, and even executives weighed in, offering their support. Everyone wanted to know how Snoop planned to respond. Would he clap back, drop a diss track of his own? Or would he stay silent and let the kid dig his own grave? Snoop, however, remained calm. He knew better than anyone that actions spoke louder than words. Instead of retaliating, he let the situation play out naturally. Meanwhile, the kid continued riding the wave of attention, oblivious to the storm brewing behind the scenes. He posted more videos, gave interviews, and kept fueling the fire, convinced that he was building momentum for his career. But then something unexpected happened. One afternoon, the kid received a phone call from a number he didn't recognize. "Curious," he answered. On the other end of the line was none other than Warren G., Snoop's close friend and collaborator. Warren introduced himself casually as if they were old buddies catching up. "Hey man," Warren said, "I saw your stuff online. Pretty bold. Move taking shots at my guy, huh? We're actually working on some new music right now, and I thought maybe you'd want to come through and vibe with us." At first, the kid was skeptical. Was this a prank? A setup? But Warren sounded genuine, and the offer seemed too good to pass up. Who wouldn't jump at the chance to meet one of the most respected figures in the game? Thinking it might be his big break, the kid accepted without hesitation. When he arrived at the studio the next day, he was greeted by a scene straight out of his wildest dreams. The room was packed with legends: Warren G., members of Dog Pound, Nate Dogg's family, paying tribute, and even DJ Battlecat spinning beats in the corner. The energy was electric, and for a moment the kid forgot why he was there. He soaked it all in, marveling at the fact that he was standing among the very people who had shaped the sound of hip-hop. But the vibe shifted quickly. Warren leaned back in his chair, looked the kid dead in the eye, and said, "You really think clowning Snoop makes you look tough? You don't even know who you're dealing with." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the kid as Warren continued. "Snoop ain't just some random celebrity, man. He's connected to everyone. From Death Row Records to Aftermath Entertainment, he's got ties everywhere. And trust me, those ties run deep." The kid felt his stomach drop. For the first time, he realized the gravity of what he had done. This wasn't just about dissing a rapper. It was about disrespecting an entire empire. An empire built on loyalty, respect, and decades of hard work. Warren paused, letting the weight of his words sink in before adding, "And you know what? Snoop isn't even the real boss in this situation. There's someone above him, a figure, so influential that even mentioning their name makes people sit up straighter. The kid swallowed hard. He had walked into this meeting expecting collaboration and validation, but instead, he found himself face to face with consequences he hadn't anticipated. For the first time, he began to wonder, had he bitten off more than he could chew? Warren's words hung heavy in the air like a storm cloud threatening to burst. The kid felt his confidence crumbling under the weight of what he was hearing. He had walked into this studio expecting praise, validation, maybe even a chance to prove himself as the next big thing. Instead, he found himself sitting in a room full of legends who were quietly sizing him up, and not in a good way. Warren leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His tone wasn't angry or confrontational. It was calm, almost fatherly. But that made it worse somehow. "Let me break it down for you," Warren said, his voice steady but firm. "Snoop ain't just some rapper with a mic. He's part of something bigger than himself. And when you mess with him, you're messing with all of us." The kid nodded nervously, trying to play it cool, but his hands betrayed him by fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. He glanced around the room and noticed that every single person was watching him. Some looked amused, others annoyed, and a few seemed downright disappointed. It was clear that they weren't here to laugh off his antics or pat him on the back. They were here to set him straight. Warren continued, his words hitting the kid like punches. "You think you can come out here, diss one of our own, and expect nothing to happen? You don't even know where Snoop comes from or who stands behind him." That last line caught the kid off guard. "What do you mean?" he asked hesitantly, already regretting opening his mouth. Warren smirked, leaning back again. "I'm talking about Calvin Broadus Sr. Ever heard of him?" The kid froze. The name sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. All he knew was that it carried weight, serious weight. Warren didn't wait for an answer. He went on to explain that Calvin Sr., Snoop's father, wasn't just any ordinary guy. He was a respected community leader, a businessman, and someone who had quietly pulled strings for decades to keep things running smoothly. Not just in the music world, but beyond it. "He's the reason Snoop stays grounded," Warren said, his voice softening slightly. "And trust me, he doesn't take kindly to people disrespecting his family." The kid's mind raced. He had gone from mocking a rapper to accidentally offending an entire dynasty. This wasn't just about music anymore, it was personal. And if there was one thing the kid had learned growing up, it was that messing with someone's family was a surefire way to make enemies. As Warren spoke, pieces of the puzzle started falling into place. The kid realized that Snoop's success wasn't just about talent. It was about connections, loyalty, and respect. People didn't rally around Snoop because he was famous. They rallied around him because he represented something bigger, something real. Warren must have seen the panic creeping onto the kid's face because he softened his tone a little. "Look, man, we're not here to destroy you. We're here to teach you a lesson. You've got potential, I'll give you that. But you're going about this all wrong. If you want to make it in this game, you've got to understand the rules. Respect is everything. Without it, you're nothing." The kid swallowed hard, feeling smaller than he ever had before. For years he had dreamed of being the center of attention, of having people look up to him the way they looked up to Snoop. But now, sitting in this room surrounded by legends, he realized how far he still had to go. He wasn't ready for this level of scrutiny or responsibility. Before the kid could respond, Warren stood up and gestured toward the door. "Come with me," he said simply. Confused but too intimidated to argue, the kid followed him out of the studio and into a sleek black car waiting outside. They drove in silence, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The kid stared out the window, wondering where they were headed and what awaited him when they got there. When the car finally pulled up to a sprawling estate, the kid's heart sank. This wasn't just a house, it was a mansion, complete with manicured lawns, towering gates, and security guards stationed at every corner. As they stepped out of the car, Warren placed a reassuring hand on the kid's shoulder. "Don't worry," he said. "Just be honest. Be humble and listen." They walked inside, and the first thing the kid noticed was the warmth of the space. Despite its size, the house felt inviting, filled with photos of family, trophies, and memorabilia from Snoop's career. In the living room, seated in a plush armchair, was Calvin Broadus Sr. Calvin Sr. wasn't what the kid expected. He wasn't flashy or intimidating. In fact, he looked more like a wise elder than a powerful figure. But there was something about him, a quiet authority that commanded respect without saying a word. When he stood up to greet the kid, his handshake was firm, his gaze piercing. "Sit down," Calvin Sr. said, motioning to a seat across from him. The kid obeyed, perching awkwardly on the edge of the couch. Warren took a seat nearby, leaving the kid alone in the spotlight. For a moment, no one spoke. Calvin Sr. studied the kid carefully, taking in every detail, the nervous twitch of his fingers, the sweat forming on his forehead, the way he avoided making eye contact. Finally, he broke the silence. "I hear you've been talking a lot lately," Calvin Sr. began, his voice calm but commanding. "About my son." The kid's throat tightened. He opened his mouth to speak but couldn't find the words. Calvin Sr. didn't push him. Instead, he launched into a story about Snoop's journey, about the struggles he faced growing up, and about the values that kept him grounded through it all. "He didn't get here by tearing people down," Calvin Sr. said, his tone firm but kind. "He got here by building people up, by showing respect, earning trust, and staying true to himself. That's the legacy we're protecting, and that's why your actions matter." The kid listened intently, his guilt growing with each passing second. He had never thought about Snoop's life beyond the fame, the hits, and the larger-than-life persona. Hearing Calvin Sr. talk about his son's journey gave him a new perspective, one he desperately needed. By the time Calvin Sr. finished speaking, the kid was visibly shaken. He apologized profusely, promising to change his ways and make amends. Calvin Sr. nodded, accepting the apology, but warned him that words meant nothing without action. Redemption wouldn't come easy, but it was possible if the kid was willing to work for it. As they wrapped up the meeting, the kid felt a strange mix of emotions: fear, shame, but also gratitude. For the first time, he understood what it truly meant to be part of something bigger than himself, and he knew that if he wanted to succeed, he'd have to earn his place, not demand it. The days following the meeting with Calvin Broadus Sr. were a whirlwind for the kid. He left that mansion feeling like he had been handed a second chance, but it wasn't the kind of opportunity you could take lightly. It came with strings attached, expectations, responsibilities, and a whole lot of pressure to prove himself. For the first time in his life, he realized that success wasn't just about talent or ambition. It was about earning trust, showing respect, and understanding the bigger picture. At first, the kid struggled to process everything that had happened. His mind kept replaying Calvin Sr.'s words over and over again. "Redemption doesn't come easy." Those 5 simple words weighed heavily on him. He knew he couldn't undo what he'd done, mocking Snoop Dogg, disrespecting an entire legacy. But he also knew he had to try. If there was even a sliver of hope left for him to salvage, his reputation, he had to grab it with both hands. So he got to work. The very next morning, instead of hitting the clubs or chasing after quick clout online, the kid locked himself in the studio. This time, though, he wasn't there to write diss tracks or flashy one-liners. He wanted to create something meaningful, something that would show the world he was serious about changing. He spent hours reflecting on his mistakes, pouring his emotions into lyrics that told his story honestly. He wrote about growing up hungry for fame, about feeling overlooked and underestimated, and about how those feelings had led him down the wrong path. But he didn't stop there. He also acknowledged his missteps, owning up to the fact that he had disrespected someone who deserved nothing but admiration. By the end of the week, he had crafted a heartfelt track titled "Lessons Learned." When the song dropped, people weren't sure what to expect. Some thought it was another publicity stunt, while others hoped it might be genuine. But as listeners tuned in, they quickly realized this wasn't just another attempt to stir drama. The kid's delivery was raw and vulnerable, his words dripping with sincerity. Lines like, "I built my throne on shaky ground. Now I see the weight of what I threw around," struck a chord with fans. Even critics, who had previously dismissed him as arrogant, admitted that the song felt authentic. To everyone's surprise, Snoop Dogg reached out shortly after the release. At first, the kid panicked. Was this retaliation? A final blow to shut him down for good? But when he answered the call, Snoop's voice was calm and surprisingly warm. "What's good, young blood?" Snoop said casually, as if they were old friends catching up. The kid stumbled over his words, unsure of how to respond. Before he could say anything coherent, Snoop cut him off with a laugh. "Relax, man. I ain't calling to fight. I heard your track, you've got heart." Those words hit the kid harder than any insult ever could. Here was the man he had mocked, the legend whose name he had dragged through the mud, and yet Snoop was extending an olive branch. Not only that, but he was complimenting the kid's music, acknowledging his effort to make things right. It was more than the kid deserved, and he knew it. Snoop went on to explain why he was reaching out. "Look, man, we all make mistakes. What matters is how you bounce back. My pops liked your apology, said you seemed sincere, so I figured, why not give you a shot? Let's put the past behind us and do something positive." The kid couldn't believe what he was hearing. Snoop wasn't just forgiving him, he was offering to collaborate. Together, they decided to work on a new track, one that would blend their styles and send a message of unity and growth. The collaboration sent shockwaves through the industry. Fans were skeptical at first, wondering if this was some elaborate hoax or PR move, but when the song dropped, it silenced the doubters. The track became a massive hit, not just because of its catchy beat and clever verses, but because of the story behind it. People loved seeing two artists from different generations come together to squash beef and create something beautiful. It was proof that humility and forgiveness could bridge even the widest gaps. For the kid, the experience was transformative. Working alongside Snoop taught him lessons he never would have learned otherwise. He saw firsthand how Snoop carried himself, not just as a rapper, but as a person. He watched how Snoop treated everyone with kindness, whether it was a janitor cleaning the studio or a top-tier producer. He noticed how Snoop stayed grounded despite his fame, always giving credit to those who helped him along the way. By the time the project wrapped, the kid felt like a completely different artist and a better human being. He no longer cared about chasing fame for the sake of being famous. Instead, he focused on building genuine connections, creating music that mattered, and paying it forward to the next generation of aspiring rappers. As months turned into years, the kid continued to grow. He became known not just for his skills on the mic, but for his humility and willingness to mentor others. He often spoke publicly about his journey, sharing the lessons he had learned the hard way. "Respect is everything," he'd say during interviews. "If you don't respect the people who paved the way, you'll never truly understand where you're going." Looking back, the kid realized that mocking Snoop Dogg had been the worst mistake of his career, but it had also been the turning point. Without that moment of reckoning, he might have continued down a path of arrogance and self-destruction. Instead, he emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to leave a lasting impact, not just on the music world, but on the lives of those around him. And as for Snoop, well, he remained exactly who he'd always been: cool, collected, and unshakable. To him, the whole ordeal was just another chapter in a long and storied career. But deep down, he took pride in knowing that he had helped guide someone lost back onto the right path. After all, that's what legends do. They inspire, uplift, and lead by example. The collaboration between the kid and Snoop Dogg turned out to be more than just a hit song. It became a movement. The track, titled "Second Chances," resonated with fans across generations. Its message of redemption, growth, and unity struck a chord that went far beyond music charts. People weren't just listening to it, they were living it. Social media buzzed with stories of listeners who had faced their own mistakes and found inspiration in the unlikely partnership between a brash upstart and a seasoned legend. For the kid, this period marked a turning point, not just professionally, but personally. He realized that his journey wasn't about proving himself to others anymore. It was about becoming someone he could respect when he looked in the mirror. Every lyric he wrote now carried weight. Every performance felt authentic, and every interaction with fans came from a place of gratitude rather than ego. Gone were the days of chasing clout or trying to tear others down to lift himself up. Instead, he focused on building bridges, showing humility, and using his platform for good. But the transformation didn't happen overnight. There were moments when doubt crept back in, whispering that maybe he didn't deserve this second chance after all. Late at night, alone in his apartment, he'd replay the memory of mocking Snoop at the club. He'd cringe at how arrogant and foolish he sounded, wondering if people would ever truly forgive him, or if they'd always see him as that guy who tried to clown a legend. On those nights, he reminded himself of Calvin Sr.'s words, "Redemption doesn't come easy." And so he kept pushing forward, determined to earn back the trust he had broken. One of the biggest challenges during this time was facing the industry itself. While some people welcomed the kid's change of heart, others remained skeptical. Old rivals whispered behind his back, accusing him of faking his newfound humility for publicity. Industry insiders questioned whether his apology was genuine or just another calculated move to stay relevant. Even some fans hesitated to fully embrace him again, unsure if he had truly changed or was simply riding the wave of his collaboration with Snoop. To combat the skepticism, the kid decided to let his actions speak louder than his words. He began visiting schools and community centers, sharing his story with young, aspiring artists. He talked openly about his mistakes, emphasizing the importance of respect, hard work, and staying true to oneself. During one such visit, a teenager asked him, "What do you do when you mess up big time? How do you fix it?" The kid paused, thinking carefully before answering. "You start by owning up to it," he said. "No excuses, no blaming anyone else. Then you put in the work to make things right. It's not going to be easy, and not everyone's going to believe you at first. But if you're consistent, if you show people through your actions that you've changed, they'll see it eventually." His honesty struck a nerve with the audience. Kids nodded along, scribbling notes as if every word might hold the key to their dreams. For many of them, the kid was proof that failure wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. His willingness to admit his flaws made him relatable in a way flashy cars and designer clothes never could. Meanwhile, Snoop continued to play a pivotal role in the kid's growth. Their collaboration hadn't ended with second chances. In fact, it opened the door to an ongoing mentorship that shaped the kid's career in ways he never imagined. Snoop introduced him to producers, artists, and executives who believed in his potential. More importantly, he taught him the value of loyalty and integrity, qualities that couldn't be bought or faked. "Man, success ain't about the money or the fame," Snoop told him one evening after a studio session. "It's about leaving something behind that matters. When you walk away from this game, what are people going to remember? The hits? Sure. But more than that, they'll remember how you treated them. That's your real legacy." Those words stuck with the kid long after the conversation ended. They became a guiding principle for everything he did moving forward. Whether he was negotiating deals, writing lyrics, or interacting with fans, he asked himself one question: will this add to my legacy or take away from it? As time went on, the kid's efforts began to pay off. His music evolved, blending introspective storytelling with infectious beats that appealed to both old-school purists and modern-day listeners. Critics who had once dismissed him as a flash in the pan started praising his maturity and depth. Fans who had written him off as a joke rallied behind him, championing his comeback as a testament to resilience and growth. Perhaps the most rewarding part of this journey was seeing how his relationship with Snoop deepened over time. What had started as a reluctant truce blossomed into a genuine friendship. They weren't just collaborators anymore. They were brothers in arms, united by shared experiences and mutual respect. The kid often joked that working with Snoop was like getting a masterclass in life itself. From learning how to navigate tricky business decisions to mastering the art of staying calm under pressure, Snoop taught him lessons that extended far beyond music. One day, while recording a new track together, Snoop turned to the kid with a sly grin. "You know, I gotta thank you for something," he said. The kid raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Me? Thank me for what?" "For reminding me why I love doing this," Snoop replied. "Watching you grow, seeing you hustle, and knowing I played a part in helping you find your lane. It's fulfilling, man. Makes me proud." The kid felt a lump rise in his throat. He wanted to say something meaningful, something profound enough to match the moment, but instead, he simply nodded, letting the gratitude wash over him. Words weren't necessary. Sometimes silence spoke louder than anything else. By the time the year came to a close, the kid had accomplished more than he ever dreamed possible. His redemption story inspired countless others, proving that even the biggest mistakes could lead to beautiful outcomes if approached with humility and determination. He wasn't perfect, he still stumbled occasionally, but he was committed to growing, learning, and giving back. And yet, despite all the success, the kid knew he owed it all to one person, Snoop Dogg. Without Snoop's grace, wisdom, and unwavering support, none of this would have been possible. So on a quiet evening in December, he picked up his phone and sent a simple text. "Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." Snoop's response came almost immediately. "That's what family does, young blood. Now, keep shining." With those words, the kid smiled, knowing he had finally found his place, not just in the music world, but in the hearts of those who mattered most. As the years rolled by, the kid's transformation became more than just a personal victory. It turned into a blueprint for others. His story of redemption wasn't just his own anymore. It had become a beacon of hope for anyone who'd ever felt like they were too far gone to turn things around. From young artists trying to break into the industry to everyday people struggling with their own mistakes, the kid's journey resonated deeply. People saw in him what they wanted to see in themselves. Someone who messed up big time but found a way to rise above it. One of the most impactful ways the kid gave back was through mentorship. He started hosting workshops and free sessions for aspiring musicians, sharing not only technical skills but also life lessons he wished someone had told him when he was starting out. "I used to think being successful meant having everyone look at you," he'd say during these sessions. "But real success is about looking at yourself and liking what you see." He often spoke about how arrogance almost cost him everything. "When I mocked Snoop that night at the club, I thought I was proving something. But really, I was showing my own insecurities. I was scared. Scared I'd never measure up. Scared no one would notice me unless I made noise." Turns out, all that noise did was drown out the things that mattered. His advice always came from a place of authenticity. He didn't sugarcoat the struggles or pretend he had it all figured out. Instead, he emphasized the importance of patience, persistence, and humility. "You can't rush growth," he'd tell the crowd. "It happens in its own time, on its own terms. All you can do is show up, stay consistent, and trust the process." What struck people most was how transparent he was about his failures. He didn't shy away from talking about the backlash he faced after mocking Snoop, the sleepless nights spent doubting himself, or the moments when he felt like giving up entirely. By being honest about his low points, he made it easier for others to confront their own. Fans began reaching out to him on social media, thanking him for helping them navigate tough times. Some shared stories of overcoming addiction, while others talked about rebuilding broken relationships. To the kid, these messages meant more than any award or chart-topping hit ever could. Despite his growing influence, the kid never lost sight of where he came from, or who helped him get there. Snoop remained a constant presence in his life, both as a friend and a guiding force. Their bond grew stronger with each passing year, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. The kid often joked that Snoop was like an older brother who refused to let him slack off, even when he thought he deserved a break. "You think you're done growing?" Snoop teased one day after a particularly grueling studio session. "Man, growth don't stop till the credits roll, keep pushing." The kid laughed, knowing Snoop was right. Growth wasn't a destination, it was a lifelong journey. And while he had come a long way since that fateful night at the club, he knew there was still plenty of work ahead. What made the kid's evolution so remarkable wasn't just his individual success. It was how he inspired those around him to grow alongside him. Collaborators, producers, and even former critics began praising him, not just for his talent but for his character. Industry veterans who once dismissed him as a reckless upstart now hailed him as a role model for the next generation. Even Calvin, Broadus Sr., whose initial sternness had shaken the kid to his core, expressed pride in how far he'd come. "You've earned this," Calvin Sr. said during a rare phone call, "not because of your music but because of the man you've become. That takes courage." Those words stayed with the kid long after the call ended. Courage, that's what it boiled down to. It took courage to admit his mistakes, to face the consequences of his actions, and to rebuild his life piece by piece. But courage wasn't something you were born with, he realized. It was something you chose every single day. By the time the kid released his third solo album, a deeply personal project titled Built from the Ground Up, he had cemented his place not just as an artist, but as a leader within the community. The album chronicled his entire journey, from the highs of early ambition to the lows of public humiliation, and finally to the redemption he fought so hard to achieve. Critics called it a masterpiece, praising its vulnerability and honesty. Fans called it life-changing, saying it gave them the push they needed to chase their dreams without fear of failure. At the album release party, surrounded by friends, family, and collaborators, the kid took a moment to reflect on how far he'd come. Standing on stage with a microphone in hand, he looked out at the sea of faces and smiled. "A few years ago, I stood in this same spot, thinking I had to tear people down to lift myself up," he said. "Tonight, I stand here knowing that true greatness isn't about standing above anyone. It's about lifting others as you climb." The crowd erupted in applause, but the kid's eyes locked onto one person in particular. Snoop Dogg, sitting casually in the front row with that familiar laid-back grin. As their eyes met, the kid raised his glass in a silent toast. Snoop nodded, lifting his drink in return. No words were exchanged, but none were needed. They both knew the road behind them had been long and winding, and the road ahead promised to be just as challenging. But together, they had proven that second chances weren't just possible. They were powerful. As the night wore on, the kid stepped off stage and mingled with guests, shaking hands, taking photos, and sharing laughs. For the first time in his life, he felt truly at peace. Success wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about connection, purpose, and leaving a mark that lasted beyond the spotlight. And so, the kid continued forward, not as someone chasing validation, but as someone determined to give back. He knew he'd never forget the lessons he learned along the way, the pain of failure, the weight of accountability, and the power of forgiveness. Those lessons weren't just his story. They were a gift he planned to share with the world, one song, one conversation, and one second chance at a time.